Hey y'all, and good morning, but also happy Saturday. I'm not sure when you'll see this, but I am walking you through the state of the data center fight in Louisiana. And I'm honored to do that and to be invited to give this presentation. My name is Angelle Bradford Rosenberg. I live in New Orleans, but I have been working for a couple of years or volunteering for a couple of years to help push back against the data center build out here in Louisiana. And it's been actually really rewarding work and a lot of fun, even though very challenging, exhausting, and oftentimes frustrating. And so I want to really ground us in the timeline of successes and challenges and what that's really looked like over the last couple of years. So we have to go back really to winter of 2024 to fully understand where things started to get super, I guess I'll say interesting in Louisiana, but honestly, destabilizing and concerning are probably better word choices. And it was probably before that because we have many people, there's many people that I work with and many of incredible organizers and folks who are staff. I'm, a volunteer in this work, but there are staff people across this state who are doing great work. And then obviously community leaders. And, in 2024, however, uh, data centers were fairly new in the terms of like hyperscalers. So when you think data centers, we're talking Meta, we're talking Amazon, we're talking Microsoft. So the hyperscalers, the mega data centers. And so those were a fairly newer concept in 2024 for Louisiana. Now, so many have been proposed or popped up or are being developed. But back then, it was a newer concept. And it was something that, had to be confronted both in the utility space, but also on the ground is, organizers and community members. And so I was contacted by a local Monroe organizer who was super interested in doing more around the announcement that there was a Meta data center that was coming to Rayville or Holly Ridge. It's truthfully Holly Ridge is where they're building, but Rayville is the incorporated town, and this is in Richland Parish. So if you've seen the New York Times articles about this part of the state, this is where Meta is building now their biggest data center. And so I worked with a couple of other volunteer leaders and friends to have a summer meeting and around this concern, and it was a total flop. But that and I won't even say total flop because it's never truly a total flop because even while up there, we were able to gain an understanding of the needs of the community and still build relationships. But when you're in a brand new place, so for example, and what I mean by brand new places, it's brand new um, you know, area that hadn't been invested in a while by many folks and many organizations. And so this is an area that lacks party infrastructure in terms of like political parties or organizational infrastructure. Southeast Louisiana gets a lot of love and money and investment and attention, but the Delta and Northeast Louisiana, not so much. And so you're really starting from scratch when you're trying to build out support for this part of the state. And so volunteers and members had not been engaged in decades for, members of various organizations and, volunteers just in general who could tap into a larger campaign just had not, people had not been talked to in forever. So anyway, local zoning and planning was also a real gap for this area. There wasn't a lot of it. And so as a result, it was a prime piece of land for a data center of this size and scale to exploit, quite frankly. And so the community did not have like the defenses that a lot of other communities across the country have been able to either have in place or have gotten over time instituted in order to protect themselves from hyperscalers that can come in and just, do whatever they want without consequence. And so November of last year, I worked with some good friends and colleagues in the work, and we went back to this part of the state. This has really been like a personal challenge for me because I love this part of the state and I want it to succeed. Like the Delta is so important. And so we went back to Holly Ridge and Rabel and held a first town hall. Nearly 100 people attended. And that also included, quite frankly, media, local, state, and national. And it was at a local pizza place. And we were able to really get get a pulse on like what was happening and what people's concerns were. Now, for data centers, I think a lot of people like have certain ideas of like what the biggest concerns are, but the truth of the matter is that the number one thing that comes up is like quality of life. So like dust everywhere, being like causing so much impact on people's lives and nuisance and traffic, but traffic in the sense of like mega trucks all day, every day, disrupting their lives for those who live near the property. But then on top of that, I think a big thing that comes up is water. So, water, even in an abundant, like a water abundant state like Louisiana, water is still an important topic and something that people are concerned about. Um, Especially because you don't want to be competing with for water with a hyperscaler. And so, you know, that was a big focus. And then just the uncertainty of the jobs, the longevity of this like commitment, the actual transparency of the decisions made, but whether it's at the local, state, or federal level with this company, and then the actual jobs that would transpire. And so the next day was DEQ air permit hearing on November 18th, and DEQ received thousands of comments, or over 1,000 comments, in a couple of days. And what was so amazing about these like several days was this led to connections between community and journalists, and people were able to tell their narratives and their stories on their own terms. And those relationships have continued. So I will hear from media or journalists, and I will continue to hand those relationships over to local folks because they're the ones who are at the center of it. And so it's their story to tell. So till this day, we regularly, so like are kind of like, these people who I so deeply care about in this community, and I, you know, just pick up the threads that work for us. And so some folks have self-selected into like work that is more around policy and are coming at this data center fight from that angle. And some folks volunteer their time in electoral fashion. So, like supporting candidates who are not, data center crazy. And then some folks have been getting trainings from incredible organizations across this country, like AI Now, and which, sounds like a counterintuitive name, but like they're not pro AI or pro data center. And then there's been Halt the Harm. There's been different cohorts that have been leading trainings. And then some folks like myself, have been supporting and volunteering for Alderwoman Consuelo Hunter, who won mayor in May. Was it May? No, in June of this year, actually, because there was a runoff. And so yeah, so it's been a busy couple of months, and moving forward, honestly, the work continues in community and connection, and in relationship with each other, and just figuring out what works and what we can, what doesn't work for us. And so there are other data center fights. I can't speak too much about strategy in terms of like litigation, beyond the fact that I'm not like privy to it, but also for what I do know, I won't speak for other organizations or communities, but it is worth mentioning that there is So on the opposite side of the north, in Northwest Louisiana, there is a legal challenge that continues through the courts. There's an appeal for the Amazon data center in Shreveport, but there are two more data centers proposed for the area. One outside of Shreveport, but still in Caddo Parish, in what is called Mooringsport slash Blanchard, and then also one in Benton in Bossier Parish. And so worth keeping an eye on those two Amazon data centers as well. Of course, there's Anthropic in South Louisiana, which is closer to St. Francisville and Baton Rouge. And then there's also a proposal for another hyperscaler data center in central Louisiana. I believe it's in Rapides. There's so many proposals that I forget everything, but yes, Rapides Parish, that sounds right. And there's also proposals or just conjecture or like rumor of potential others. But the big thing is the natural gas plants. So like the natural gas plants that have to actually fuel this thing or these several things of data centers are also a space for dispute and concern and intervention with the Public Service Commission. Beyond that, another thing that has been an absolute joy, even though I guess what I just described was not an absolute joy, but this actually is, was legislative session. So there were several House bills and Senate bills that addressed water. And why that matters is that water in Louisiana is, in addition to the fact that our law is really confusing just because the way that it is designed in comparison to other states and municipalities, but also the fact that like water is just poorly regulated in Louisiana. Um, this legislative session, finally, there was some really forward-thinking, bipartisan conversations and proposals around regulating water and who actually has the purview or the jurisdiction over water in order to make decisions at the agency or like commission level. And so this year, a big part of what was addressed was actually like water sales, because there's been big concerns about water being sold to Texas, but there is ongoing work that continues around water regulation into next session. So that's the big stuff, the high level things. There's a lot more we could talk about. I really appreciate you for listening and for joining me. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me at angellebrad2015@gmail.com and have an incredible rest of your workshops and sessions and your day. Thank you.